Okay, so, I recently played Star Wars The Old Republic after having played only World of Warcraft, and it changed the way I view WoW. In that video, I do go over some details of what Star Wars The Old Republic does better, but let's be real here. Who's gonna watch a 2-hour video if the only things you want to see is how WoW can improve and why Blizzard sucks, and how Star Wars The Old Republic has a brighter future? No, for that you need a bite-sized video. You need something you can watch whilst eating. So don't worry, I got you. On top of that, there were a few things I didn't discuss in the previous video as it was already getting too long, and so I want to talk. About talking. Because whilst the story aspect of an MMORPG is important, and I will discuss it in a second, this game is a testament that maybe what's even more important is how you deliver it. You can write the next Odyssey, but if the dialogue lines are, "And honestly, Odysseus, you are right to question it," I'm skipping that. Now, I may be harsh here, and I appreciate the pushback. Shoot, was that too soon? I'm not saying WoW is the next Odyssey, but it does have an amazing story. But when I'm playing, that rarely matters. Even when I'm actually trying to pay attention to it. I do this every time. When a new expansion comes out, I'm thinking to myself, right, I will read every quest that I take, even the small side quests, I will read everything. And after a day or two, I find that I'm distancing myself more and more, starting with the side quests and eventually getting to the main quests. And when it gets to the main quests, I feel like I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm not going to pay too much attention to it and I'll just watch some YouTube videos about the lore later. Shout out to Noble87, the guy is single-handedly keeping the WoW players up to date with the story. Is this a me problem? Maybe. But also maybe it's a design problem. If you're in the middle of questing and you're being presented with a wall of text to read, it kind of stops the momentum. It would be like me asking you to subscribe right now. That would be an odd choice, as I was in the middle of explaining something important, so I won't do that. And you may start reading the text once, twice, but you'll eventually find yourself more and more enticed by that magical button. Accept. It's not like WoW didn't solve this problem. In fact, it's the opposite. It created it. Back at the beginning of WoW and now WoW Classic, reading the quests had a reason. Yeah, you clicked accept without reading the quests? Well, good luck trying to find out what to do, you dumbass. Oh no, you got lost and decided to actually read the quest? Yeah, that's what I thought. Unlike modern WoW, in the past there were no indicators telling you where to go. This made the world feel more immersive as the NPCs not only had to describe what you need to do, they also had to detail where you would need to go. Nowadays you just press accept and follow the pointy arrow to kill the highlighted enemies. SWTOR doesn't need this though, because it keeps players engaged in a different way.
Infantry Company, Korriban Regiment. Can I talk to you?
Every quest you take, heck, every side quest, every activity, everything is fully voiced. I can still barely believe this is the case. It's a lot of work to have everything voiced. Especially because the game has multiple choices for dialogues for your character, which of course leads to whoever they are talking to also having to have multiple options in replying. And that is another way in which the game keeps you engaged. You create your own story. It's not a story that's being fed to you, it is your story. You choose how to answer to everyone, you choose who your companions are, you choose who your romance options are. But because you are given this responsibility, you will pay more attention to what the quest giver says. You need to make sure you don't make the wrong choice. And to make sure you are really paying attention, there's another safety net, because you might not even be paying attention still if it wasn't that the choices actually mattered. Because in this game they do, to the point that some choices lead to companions leaving you or characters dying. And I appreciate how much effort this would take to be implemented in World of Warcraft, but WoW is not only a game that has more players, but one that also asks a lot more from your wallet. I don't think the budget is the issue here. But I'll get into the money aspect in a bit, let's keep it focused on the story for now. Which is something WoW has failed to do over the last years. WoW has a long history at this point. Whilst the first two games in the Warcraft franchise were good, they weren't really known for their story. But then in the third one, something changed. Chris Metzen became the creative director for it. And thus, legendary characters such as Hamlet but as an elf Illidan, Avril Lavigne but as a dead elf Sylvanas, and Guts but non-weeb Arthas were created. Just mentioning that one of these three names would be present in an expansion can get WoW fans excited. During his stay as a creative director, WoW has seen what the community believes to be the best expansions. But then, in 2016, he stepped back, leaving the story to another creative director. And one can argue that one single person cannot simply ruin a whole story for a game, but given the reception of the expansions following Chris's leave, it is hard not to notice the change. So for many years, people have lost hope in the story. It felt odd. Some people were saying that it was focusing too much on characters we never knew. As I explained with my previous video, this culminated with the Shadowlands expansion, where many of the stories, including Arthas's, were retconned into just being manipulated by the Jailer of Death. Not only that, but beloved characters such as Sylvanas were pushed to do things so out of character that even as they were trying later on to fix her character with redemption arcs and such, it still seems impossible to bring her back to the glory she once had. And sure, Chris might have come back to write for the latest expansion, but even that doesn't seem to be enough. The community seems to think that the threats got so big that you feel disconnected. You are a mere paladin, expected to throw your hammer at an eldritch horror. The story does not revolve around you. You revolve around the story. SWTOR is the opposite. The story is yours. You are the main point. You start at the lowest point in the class you choose and make your way to the top. And at least to the extent that I played, it never felt like a threat is too big for your character to handle, even if not alone. The biggest threat I have faced in my playthrough was Valkorion. This entity that could devour whole worlds was still defeatable by me. I don't know that anyone in the Star Wars universe was not. To the extent of my knowledge, there is no such thing as a true immortal or all-powerful being. Even in the raids or dungeons you do, the bosses don't feel like too much for your team to handle from a narrative standpoint. There is a chance that SWTOR will eventually reach the point WoW did. I feel like in a sci-fi or fantasy setting in which you have to defeat enemies, it is far too easy to fall into the next enemy needs to be bigger, it needs to represent a more massive threat. And when you get into that rabbit hole, it's hard to get yourself out of it. I think one thing that puts brakes into the possibility of SWTOR getting to that point is that the story itself is a prequel. Even though it's not canon, I don't think the writers want to deviate so much that you can't even call it a prequel to the events of the movies anymore. That would alienate too many fans. So everything that happens has to happen within some boundaries and rules for the universe. It almost grounds it. It would be quite awkward if I'm saying all this only to find out that there's an even more massive threat than Valkorion going on in the current story. But no, the whole story of SWTOR is great. Even if you don't care much about the whole Republic storyline, which, let's be real, who doesn't care about Revan? But even without that, it still manages to keep you hooked from minute one. That's how it went for me. From the first quest until the last one, I don't remember ever skipping a dialogue. The writers put so much effort into everything, and it shows. And you know what? All that for free. Yeah. You don't want to pay anything? Sure, just experience most of what the game has to offer without it. There is no pay model, or at least it's not nearly as aggressive as it is in WoW. You can go at least 40 or 50 hours in the game without ever needing to subscribe. And even when you do, the price is quite good. Well, to be honest, it's basically the same price as WoW, but there's a big difference. For WoW, even when you pay for the subscription, you can't even get everything that the game has to offer, as you need to buy the latest expansion too, which at the cheapest is the cost of basically 4 months of subscription. And when the next expansion comes out in 4 years, you have to do that again. You could argue that you don't really need the expansion to play WoW, and that is fair to an extent. You can do a lot of things even without the latest expansion. You can level up the character up to a few levels below the level cap, you can do old raids, old dungeons, old everything. But you know what the issue with that is? 80% of the players won't do the majority of those. You will do them alone. And unlike SWTOR, I don't think WoW was designed to be played alone. You can do it, don't get me wrong, and you can still have an amazing experience, but it's not designed like that for the majority of the people. For a lot of people, WoW is at its best not when you do quests, but when you spend time with your guild, pushing for harder difficulty dungeons and raids, going through the content of the latest expansion and whatever new thing they come up with. SWTOR is not like that. In fact, SWTOR is an outlier amongst many other MMOs, not just WoW. Because whilst it is an MMORPG, the focus doesn't seem to be interacting with other players as much. You still have activities to do with the guild and friends, but it's not as reliant. The game doesn't just start at max level, it starts at level 1 and then just keeps going. Until max level. Because for me at least, once I reached it, I went, well, that was fun. Let me continue with the story or create a new character to see their story. Just like I said in my previous video, SWTOR is the most single-player MMORPG I've ever played, and I absolutely love it for it. Now, you may think I'm bashing on WoW too much, and maybe I am. But I think it's just tough love, because the game is still amazing to me. I still follow the story closely, I still jump on it to do a dungeon or two. And there are things that WoW does better than SWTOR, so it's not just a one-way thing. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I love what they did with the player housing this year. It's so well put together and you can create some amazing houses. The social aspect is also much better in WoW, and you don't have to look further than WoW Hardcore for that. A version of classic WoW where your death is permanent. It got so many people together, it created so many stories, and I still haven't tried it yet. Maybe I should at one point if you guys would enjoy seeing me play that. But yeah, all in all, whilst WoW is still a fantastic game, it has a lot to learn from SWTOR and maybe from many others. And I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I disagree with a lot of people that are saying WoW is in a bad state. For me, it's in a better state than it's ever been since the Legion expansion, and I have high hopes for this game, and especially for the next one, which will conclude a trilogy of expansions. Some crazy things might happen. With that said, that is all for this video. Thanks for listening to me ramble. If you stuck with me until the end, I want you to answer me in the comments what else you think I missed. I'm sure there's a lot of elements I missed out. I'll see you in the next one though. Bye!